Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. I know it's been a long time since I've recorded a video. It's been a, no excuses. It's just a lot of stuff's going on, and I kind of excuses coming anyway. I kind of things just got in the way, and after I put off one video, I kept putting it off again and again until it got to a point where I kind of put it off one too many times. So now I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. I'm going to get back into doing my weekly draft reviews of my decks. And then after that, hopefully I'm going to get my hands on some product in the near future. I did try to get my hands on a box of the Fallout Collector, but that's been near impossible to find. I personally have not been able to get my hands on a box, and I'm trying to support a local LGS instead of just buying a box online. I know there's that possibility of doing it that way, but even then, it's a little steep to pay as much as it is for those particular boxes. But if I'm able to get my hands on a box at a reasonable price, then I'll definitely do a video for you guys. Luckily, I was able to get a pretty good deal on the commander decks themselves. I might do a video on those, but at this point I believe everyone's seen those commander decks. But regardless to what it is, I'm going to get into the two decks. I did do 3 drafts technically, but I'm just going to review the 2 decks. I know doing all 3 videos might be, or all 3 in one is per video might be a little long. We'll see how quickly I can go over these, because I do like to just kind of go into the reason why I picked each particular card, and then we'll go forward from there. So this is the first draft that I want to review. I believe this was my F&M draft, if I remember. Yep, this was the F&M draft. And this one was kind of a fun one that I really enjoyed playing. So this is initially the sideboard. At least these are the cards that I did not run in the initial 40. Vengeful Creeper has been a card that I believe some people sleep on. It's a little bit on the expensive side, but because of that disguise cost, it is a surprise 5/5 that beats up certain opponents. And the fact that whenever you do turn it face up, it is enchantment and artifact removal. So I did not run this main board, but I have had times where I do run this main board, just because it's that good of a creature. Regardless, like even if you don't play it as a 5-mana 5/5, you can play it early as a 3-mana 2/2, and then potentially have a combat trick later on, essentially. And then I just kept this in the sideboard as just a backup option. Fanatical Strength, I like this card a lot. It's essentially a giant growth that costs 1 extra mana that gives trample as well. And there's a few creatures that have either Death Touch or Lifelink or things of that nature, and then that trample damage does finish off games at times. It's very rare I use it defensively to save a creature. I prefer the offensive use of this, but it's just a great green battle trick. Ally Assailant. It's a fun 3-mana 3/3. I typically will do my best not to play it on the front side. I prefer to flip it. I was thinking about going black, but as the draft continued on, I decided to get out of it. I did pick up 2 of these. I do like this card a lot, just because as a 3-mana 3/3, it's not too bad. Yeah, it comes into play tapped. And then if you're able to, this is one of those cards that's a little bit harder to assess for the later game, but if you're able to pay the 3, put it face down, and then pay the 6 later on and flip it, that extra damage is pretty important. Case File Auditor, I am hit or miss on this particular card. There are most times I have not seen this do too well unless you have enough enchantments to make it where this is pretty viable. But then again, I've also seen where someone actually blew me out with this because they played this, got a case, solved the case, got the Buried in the Garden all within 3 turns, which never happened again after that. But regardless, just the fact that it does get you that enchantment whenever both of you, it ETBs and when you solve a case, so it's pretty decent. I just could not run it in this particular deck. 4-mana 3/2 flyer. It's pretty strong. I like this card in the sense that it's a 3/2 creature with evasion, and the fact that the ETB removing cards from a graveyard is pretty relevant in this particular set, especially with collecting evidence. I think every color is able to collect evidence and have some kind of benefit of it. So the fact that you can eat some of the bigger spells and make it harder for your opponent is pretty nice. Hazda Vigilante. I like this card a lot. Unfortunately, in this initially I was thinking about going a Selesnya kind of a build, but in the end, the way I decided to build the deck, Unfortunately, I just could not make the fit. If I had the space, I probably would have run this card, but in the end, I couldn't. And if you notice, I picked up two. I do not like this card at all. This was more of one of the last couple of cards I had to pick, essentially. I'm just not a big fan of it. The stats are not the best. I mean, yes, it's a creature with 4/3 flyer, but there are other better disguise creatures. So in the end, I just cut that card. Demand Answers is a card I really enjoy. I mean, it's what was it? I forget the name of the original card, but the fact that you can also sacrifice an artifact as well. Essentially, you pay 2 mana, sack a clue, and draw an additional card. Yes, you're pitching this, but it's pretty solid. I like it a lot. Rot Farm Mortipede. Initially, I was not a big fan of the exile or creatures leaving the graveyard mechanic, but this card is kind of nuts, especially in the black-green deck. Unfortunately, I did not go that particular route, but that is that. Oh, I should have put this with the other Phantom, but I just did not run that. And this one, I picked this up because in the end, this particular pile ended up being a 5-color pile. So I normally would never have run this unless I'm doing a 5-color thing or I absolutely need it for some kind of mana fix. Even the fact that, like, yes, it's technically a creature slot, but it's just not the best card overall. So that's in the end, this was one of the earlier cuts because I picked this, I think pack 2 if I remember correctly. And I decided not to run it because I had more than enough mana fix, and you're about to see that. Starting off, when it comes to these lands, I'm going to grab pretty much every one of them that I can whenever I draft. Reason being, I feel like these cards are just great, and I play Commander, and the fact that they are all fetchable essentially is why I'm going to just grab them every time, just because I feel like every Commander deck that I can have these lands, I'm going to be running them. I mean, I still don't have enough Triumphs and stuff for all my Commander decks, and this is a perfect example. Like, this is just, all of these cards are just a great card. And then the fact that the standard rotation is going to be around for as long as it is, these will be within standard for so long that it's just worth having. Analyze the Pollen is just an amazing card, especially with the fact that I decided to go 5 mana or 5 colors, so it definitely helps me out a lot. And then the fact that I have a specific bomb that I'm running at, which I'll reveal eventually. So either I use this to get the mana needed to fix it, or I use it to get the creature that I'm needing to beat my opponent with, which I did multiple times. Rebel Belt Maverick, I think, is just an amazing card. Definitely performed very well for me multiple times. I really like this card. This is one of those cards that if I had a one-lander that can play this card, I would absolutely run this every single time. Definitely something I really enjoyed. The Fanatical Strength. Only reason I cut one is because I needed to make some cuts, and I definitely had to run one. I got 2, and I would have run both if I had enough space. Assassin's Trophy, I definitely ran this because I needed some more removal. I'm not a big fan of giving my opponents a untapped land, essentially. But it's I didn't have too much removal. I decided to run it, and the fact that it's at instant speed to pretty much destroy anything, it's actually really strong. So it's a good one if you can run it. Because I decided going 5 colors, this is just a really good card. I actually saw someone play it turn 2 as a 2 mana 2/2, but it's very rare that I never have done that. I always play it as 3 mana face down 2/2, and typically most opponents can't kill it turn 3, and then you're able to next turn either flip it right away to go get your 4th land, or flip it at the end of the turn during your opponents, just to make sure that you get that mana fix, which mana fixing helps a lot. Tunnel Tipster. Tunnel Tipster? Yeah, Tunnel Tipster. I like this card a lot, especially with the whole disguise mechanic and cloak mechanic. This guy can get pretty big pretty fast, and early on it's just a great mana ramp regardless. So if I'm in green, this is one of those cards I value very highly. Vitugazi Inspector, I think, is really great. Even if you don't do the collect evidence part of it, just the fact that it's a 2 mana 1/3 reacher is pretty solid. And with that, like, even in the late game, you can with the, I forget what I don't know what it's actually called, but the creatures leaving graveyard stuff matters stuff. The fact that this can turn those kind of decks on, it also gains you life when you do it late game, and it makes something bigger as well. It's just overall a great common that I think is very strong. Magnifying Glass, I know there's a lot of people that think that this particular card is too slow. I personally like it a lot because more often than not, I feel in this set a lot, Whenever the games do get kind of long and grindy, it doesn't hurt to have something that allows you to draw extra cards, especially if it turns on other things in your deck. And the fact that there is plenty of mechanics where either having a clue being sacrificed matters, or drawing an extra or a second card per turn matters. Regardless, either way, I just like magnifying glass a lot, so I evaluate pretty highly myself. Due diligence, initially I was not a big fan of this particular enchantment aura, but after having it kind of essentially beat me down for 4 extra damage during opponent's turns, and the fact that it gives both of the creatures vigilance, it's pretty amazing. I actually really enjoy this card, so if I can get one in, I'll definitely slot that into a 3 slot. I needed creatures, so this is one of the ones I decided to run. It never was relevant when it came to the whole can't be blocked by a creature that has no name, which essentially means anything that's disguised with cloak can't block it. But it's still a 3-mana 4/2, so it was pretty troublesome for most opponents, so they did remove that quickly. Buried in the Garden, I was already primary green, and then the fact that this mana fixes and removes something is just amazing. So that's why I decided to run this particular card, and getting 2 of them made this very easy for me to run both of them. And so yeah, it just helped out the deck a lot. This one I believe was just a single splash, just for a little bit of recursion, just because this particular deck was a little bit on the slower end. But if after I got to a point where I could get to my heavy big bomb stuff, I pretty much could not be stopped. It got pretty bad. This is just an amazing 4-mana 4/4. I mean, there's no reason not to play. If you're either base green or X green, and you have the ability to put into the double green, it's a 4-mana 4/4 with haste. That's what I'm looking at. And it has Death Touch and Ward Collect Evidence for it on top of all that. So it's just an amazing card. Loxodon Eavesdropper, I like this card a lot myself. The fact that it's a detective #1, it's already pretty funny. The fact that it allows you to get a clue, and the fact that it already turns on its own ability initially by itself, pretty strong. And the fact that I got 3 of them all together in one deck, it made it very strong for this particular deck. With the magnifying glass, I was able to essentially, having 2 of these out, put so much pressure on opponents that I believe whenever I had 2 of them out, they never were able to beat me those games. So those were pretty ridiculous. This 4-mana 3/1 is another one of those kind of sack clue payoffs. The reason I'm running this, you'll see in a couple cards, because there was someone else in the pool that was doing the same kind of a build, but a different way. But essentially, it's a 4-mana 3/1 flyer that can essentially recur with a magnifying glass. Super easy to recur over and over. Push and Pull, if you guys don't know, don't sleep on this card. This card is either an amazing early game removal or an amazing late game finisher, just because of the fact that you can get some pretty beefy big things, and if you're able to put them into the graveyard, it definitely helps a lot. And this was the card in question when it comes to the multicolored cards. This was my card that essentially I didn't have enough cards to do the primary ability, because I only had 2 different colored pair cards. It's essentially the green-white one and the black-blue one. But I more primarily played this as a 5-mana 6/6 that was just pressure for most opponents. And also there was one game I was able to put a Due Diligence on this, so I was flying in for 8 damage every turn, untapped and flying. It was just nuts. So I mainly use this as a bomb for my deck to just essentially push in and finish a game. Oh, this is my other green-white card. I highly evaluate the card because it either, for the people that don't know, it's either whenever it's turn face up or enters the battlefield, it enters with those +1/+1 counters. Or put that, yeah. And it's as it enters, so it's not even a triggered ability. So it just gets it. So there's something to keep in mind. And the number of times that this has just been turned over and got like 3 +1/+1 counters and punched in for 7 instead of just 2 has been absurd. Very strong card that I like at common. And of course, Tropiary Panther is just an amazing card, with the fact that early game it's a mana fix, late game it's a 6-mana 6/5 trample, which is pretty solid. And with Push and Pull, pulling this from the graveyard later on, you're pulling a 6/5 trampler haste. Like, it's essentially a fireball. And if you have 3 of them, you're pretty likely to get 2 of them whenever you do a pull. So yeah, it's essentially 6-mana double fireball, if you guys remember fireball. So yeah, it was pretty nuts. The number of times I was able to pull. I even had a point where I could have paid the 6 mana to play the Tropiary Panther, but to finish the game, I actually uh, cycled the Panther, got the land, played the pull, and pulled the Panther and the other Panther that I had in the graveyard out at the same time and win the game that way. So yeah, this deck was just a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Unfortunately, I only went 2-1, but this deck, I enjoyed. It was just goofy, and the fact that multiple times I was able to play the Niv and my opponents were just baffled. Because if you noticed, this deck was pretty much, it's primarily just green cards, and then I'm splashing all four other colors. Like, the only thing that was all five obviously was Niv Mizzet. The pull push is technically either black white or red black. The black blue card, the black white or the green white cards, and a couple white cards. Like a lot of the one-ofs, most of the deck was green, but with so much fixing, I pretty much never had an issue with getting the mana that I needed. This was the other deck that I ran. This one I was trying to go artifact aggro essentially, but it just did not make it, and it ended up being more of an artifact mid-range value deck, which unfortunately I believe I went 1-2 with this particular. No, I think I went 2-1 with this one as well. I forget. It's been a couple days, and unfortunately I don't remember. Now, first off, this card is amazing, and I definitely wanted to try and play it. Unfortunately, I was not able to go blue. Oh, that's right. I think I went red and another color, but unfortunately I just could not make the blue work. Or I could not splash for this as well. I decided to splash for another card just because I didn't have enough mana fixing essentially. So I decided not to run it. But if you can run this particular card, I mean, it's pretty strong. 3 mana 4/4 beater essentially that you can also crew even if you don't have any creatures, and it allows you to cast spells from the graveyard as well. It's just overall, I think, a pretty strong card. Treacherous Screed. Unfortunately, I was not able to slot this into the deck in the end, but I've heard it's if you can pull it off pretty successfully, you could do some goofy things. And the fact that it's 3 mana, deal 3 damage, and draw 3 cards, you just have to do a very specific thing to get it done. I feel like this could do some things. I just haven't been able to pull it off myself yet. So that's that. Goblin Massmaker. I like this particular card a lot. It's already a 1 mana 1/2 that essentially makes all your disguise cards cost 2 mana after it attacks. It does not need to survive the attack, so that's not too big of a deal. And then if you happen to pull off the Goblin sub-theme, definitely helps towards the Goblin count. The Cornered Crook. This one's kind of a hit or miss for me. I probably should have run this now that I think about it in retrospect. But I think I cut it because of the 5 mana value. But if you're able to pull it off with the artifact sack thing and just deal 3 damage to any target, it's not too bad because there's plenty of just incidental artifacts that you can just sacrifice. Examples being clues, thopters. Just overall not too bad. I believe I should have ran that. Suspicious Detonation. I cut this particular one because I believe there's 2. Now I think about it, I probably should have run it in situations like excuses on my end, but it is what it is. The Crovod Haunch. Pretty decent card. I mean, it's not too bad. If you're going to do the token swing white strategies, it's not too bad. And the fact that it allows you to gain life and make some dudes, and it's just it wasn't too bad, but unfortunately I did not go white. The Chase is On is a fun combat trick. It does cost a little bit more mana than the others because it costs 3, but the fact that it lets you investigate and draw that card later on is pretty good. So unfortunately it did not make the cut for me. It doesn't add up, I believe. I'm trying to remember why I cut this, but this card is pretty strong. But maybe the fact that I didn't have too many good reanimation targets is maybe why I didn't just run it in the end. Getting stuck with this and the late picks again, I'm not a big fan. Leyline of the Guild Pact, I'll admit, this was just a value grab. I might be building the Scion of Draco deck with this. I haven't decided on that just yet, but it's an amazing card. And if you're able to get the stupid, I believe, Case of the Shattered Pact, the colorless case that lets you get a basic land and you solve it at the end of turn, this and that, it's automatically solving the case. So I think that would be fun. Unfortunately, I did not get that particular card, but that is what it is. This one I believe I just hate drafted because I've lost to this card. I can't count how many times, the number of times that people have flipped it over, gave all their things +1/+1 counters, and trample until end of turn. it's just a nuts card, so I decided to make sure to get that out of the way. And this was the last pick, I believe, so that's what it is. So that's the sideboard for this particular pool. Going again, I already explained it once, but just saying, I love these lands. They're an investment, I feel, and I'm just going to grab them pretty much every time I can. So there's that. Scene of the Crime actually is a pretty fun. The fact that it's an artifact land clue, I like it a lot. Yeah, it does enter the battlefield tapped, and yes, you have to tap another permanent to get that extra the mana of another color. But overall, I like that card a lot, so it's a decent card, so I definitely run it. And now that I think about it, I did have Public Thoroughfare in here as well. I probably should have run on the artifact, that first one that I showed you, the Killux? Volt Strider? I probably should have run it now that I think about it, but it is what it is. Call a Surprise Witness. I actually like this card a lot. There's a lot of pretty strong 3-mana value creatures that you could just bring back with this. Examples being Krenko, Teysa Karlov, Delnier. There's just so many cards that this works with, and the fact that it gives it flying as well, it's kind of it's pretty ridiculous for 2 mana. Homicide Investigator is a really strong black card that allows you to investigate, and then it lets you essentially grind out the games and make them longer than needed, or not longer than needed, but lets you essentially build up till you get value. And getting, oh, I did not sort it. I believe this particular pool only had one. Yeah, Homicide Investigator is a pretty strong 2-mana 2/2. Case of the Gateway Express. This card is just nuts. If you get this, I believe I pack one picked one, this particular card, just because it is that strong and limited, and it's an amazing card that's being played in Standard for sure. I'm not sure about Pioneer. I don't really pay attention to the Pioneer scene, but overall, it's just an amazing removal spell that you can easily solve. That is an anthem. It's just a great card. So whenever I can draft this, I'll draft this it's just such a strong card. Concealed Weapon, I slept on this one initially at the beginning of draft season, but lately it's been more of a fun battle trick, especially whenever you attack with this as a face down creature and attack with another creature, and typically your opponents will block the face down creature being afraid of it, and if it's just going to die, I'm like, okay, flip it over, equip it to my thing right away, and deal an extra 3 damage there instead of getting in the other way. So it's been kind of fun doing that particular move. And it's a decent equipment as well. The fact that it gives a +3/+0 is not too bad. Doorkeeper Thrall, the number of times I was able to turn off opponents' things with this is a lot of fun. And it's a 2-mana 1/2 flyer is the best way I look at it. And it does turn off a lot of my deck, but I do my best not. It never negatively affected my deck essentially because I knew how to play around it. And then the number of times I was able to turn off, I believe my opponent had, I forget the name of the detective, the Azorius detective that when it ETBs you get to investigate twice. This was able to turn that off, and I was able to get in because they didn't get that extra artifact. So it definitely was pretty powerful. Long Goodbye is it's an amazing removal in this particular set, especially the fact that this spell can't be countered. So Ward 2 doesn't matter, because you can target that disguise card or target that cloak card and be like, I'm killing this, unless you're able to flip it over and it has a higher mana value. But overall, it's a decent removal. Not on my watch has got to be one of my favorite white attacking matters removal spells. The fact that I'm like 2 mana, exile that creature. The only stipulation is the fact that it's attacking. It's pretty strong, and I pretty highly value that. This is the one card that I splashed into my deck that was blue, and I like this card a lot. And I do have a lot of just things sacrificed artifacts matters, and I had a good handful of those. And at uncommon, you don't see these too often, but whenever you can build around the artifact matters deck, this card is just pretty nuts. And then I believe there's that satchel as well that when it ETBs, you investigate twice, and then you can tap it to make a Thopter, and only stipulation is you have to have sacked something. So if you're dueling that deck, like, it's just pretty nuts. Case of the Crimson Pulse, I like this card a lot, and I'm thinking about building either a Boros aggro deck or a mono red aggro deck for Standard. and just running probably maybe even 4 of these, just because if you can get one off and have it stick on the board, it's so easy to solve because you're essentially trying to empty your hand, and drawing 3 extra cards or 3 cards instead of just 1 every turn just kind of pushes you ahead. Because that's one thing I've noticed with a lot of aggro decks is typically you gas out. If your opponent's able to stabilize, then they'll stabilize and then pull back and run you over. But getting the 2 extra cards every turn, yeah, this card I feel like it is going to be doing some things. The Gearbane Orangutan, I'm a big fan of this particular card. Either I'm destroying something artifact-wise, or if I happen to have an artifact to sacrifice, it's 3 mana 4/4 with reach. And worst case scenario, and there's nothing to blow up, it's just a 3 mana 2/2 with reach. The fact that it has reach and able to answer flying threats is pretty strong. I believe I got 3 of those, but we'll double check and see. Sanguine Savior is definitely a strong pick. I feel the fact that lifelink definitely matters, especially if you flip it and gain some life off of like a big swing. Example being like that +3/+0, putting it on another creature, flipping it, and then flipping this and giving that an additional, let's say, 5 life. With this hitting, that's another 2 life. That's 7 life. That's just upping you. Like, it's pretty, like, it's absurd. It's almost half of your life that you gain with that particular instance. So I like this card a lot, and it's an evasion as well, so it's pretty solid. Another Gearbane. Due Diligence, once again, is just one of those cards I really enjoy, so I definitely ran that. Once again, like I said, Magnifying Glass. I think every time I do one of these videos during this particular season, I'll probably have one of these in almost every one of my decks. I just enjoy the card a lot. It's a pet card, I think. Inside Source has got to be one of the dumbest commons for pretty much most decks. The fact that it 3 mana makes 3 power and toughness is already pretty solid. And that ability, a lot of people forget, or I've seen people forget, that it gives vigilance and +2/+0 to the detective. And the detective creature type does matter. There's more than enough things that this can pump that's not just a detective token that it creates. Example being even that elephant that I showed you from this deck. Like, this thing can do some ridiculous things. Another orangutan, 3 of them was pretty solid. The Harry Dronesmith is something I evaluate this card pretty highly, and even a lot of my opponents are highly evaluated as well, because they always, every time they had the ability to do so, they killed this as soon as possible. They did not let this stick around at all. In this particular deck, case in point, the Gearsmith, the drone, not the Dronesmith, but the Gear Drake, sorry. Every turn, making that drone, you sack that drone every turn. So the Gear Drake will just keep on getting bigger and bigger. The orangutan also could benefit from sacrificing the Thopter as well. And now that I think about that 5 mana Viashino, I could have run with this. I probably should have done that now I think about it. The Gadget Technician. This is an amazing Goblin Artificer. The fact that it's a 4 mana 3/2 that makes 2 dudes. Now, yes, this is technically blue, but I usually play this just for the double red. And the fact that either when it ETBs or when it flips, you make the Thopter. So I like this card a lot. The Karlov Watchdog is a very strong card. It alone does not have to be the one to attack. You can have 3 other creatures, so essentially you can turn 1 play something, turn 2 play something, turn 3 play something. If you curve out perfectly and play this turn 4 with no removal, you can attack with the first 3 creatures and they all get +1/+1 until end of turn. So it's a card that I like a lot. The Harry Dronesmith, once again, just a really good card, and the fact that I got 2 of them in one pull is pretty insane. The Suspicious Detonation it's okay. It is not the best removal, but if you're able to pull off the draw card and cast it for 2, dealing 4 damage to creatures, is very strong. And this is one of those cannot be countered spells, so you can definitely get rid of those disguised ward cards. Bolrak Clan Basher. This card is very strong, and it was a lot of fun putting if you're able to cast it for just as a 6 mana 3/2, it's not the best because your opponents will see it coming. But if you're able to get them with the disguise and then flip over and do double strike damage, it definitely hurts, especially because it has trample. And then the equipment that I showed earlier, if you're able to do the attack and do the trick and swing in and then equip this as well, yeah, it gets in damage and mean. Slice from the Shadows is just a decent, solid removal spell. If you can get it, run it. And the fact that it also has the cannot be countered clause is definitely a plus. And then the Shady Informant it's a decent 5-mana 4/2 that when it does die you can just bolt something, or not bolt but shock something, because it's only 2 damage. And then if you do it for the disguise, that is a nice little combat trick. So it's like, yeah, you know it's going to die, but you're able to flip it over. You'll trade with whatever you block it or attacked it with, and then you can shock something else. But yep, with this particular deck, like I said, I don't remember if it went 1-2 or went 2-1. But unfortunately, neither one of these decks were undefeated decks. But they were fun decks that I enjoyed playing. And then I know it's been kind of a long video, so 30 minutes is kind of long. So thank you so much if you made it to the end. Got a couple codes for you guys. This is from, like, since it's been, I believe, months since I've uploaded one of these videos. I've opened my promo packs. So here's a couple codes for everybody. I'm going to just do them one at a time. I've also done just a handful of just miscellaneous drafts or pre-releases that I have not shared those codes yet myself or either. So here are these codes. If you do get one of the codes, do try and be, don't take all of them if you happen to be the one person to get these codes. But if you do, it's your benefit. I'm just giving these away. These are just a small thank you for, taking the time, getting to the end of the video and watching. Even if you just skip to the end of the video knowing that I do this, hey, it's all good. Just if you have the time, if you have the chance, feel free and leave the videos playing in the background. It'll definitely help and get my voice out there. I was going to say get my face out there, but I haven't put my face on these videos just yet. We'll get there one day. But for now, thank you guys so much again for taking the time to watch the video. Once again, if you made it to this point of the video, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I do look forward to me trying to get more product. I'll definitely be doing that as soon as I can. Other than that, do take the time to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the fun algorithm things, and I would really appreciate that. Otherwise, at this time, I did notice that I did have I'm trying to get the shop back together. It's just going to be an online shop, but I'm going to be working on that again. And if there are any comments, feel free to put them into the chat, or not in the chat, but comment under the video. Feel free to ask questions, put statements, what have you. I do read every single comment at this time. I don't have too many just yet, but as of right now, I do take the time to read everything. But like I said, once again, comment, like, subscribe, do the things, and appreciate that, everyone. Once again, never forget, say bye, I didn't notice. Good night.